there are questions I have, right? So the question is, how do we get the transition? Okay, we have a transition, and it says in the 3rd year of Cyrus. And for me personally, just because I was told that this is Gabriel speaking, I said okay, but I can't see it. And this is like 4 and 5, right? It seems like he's in a vision. So 5 says, "Then I lifted up mine eyes, and I looked, and I behold a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with a fine gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl." And it says, "And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. For the men that were with me saw not the vision." And I'm skipping, I apologize. 7. "But a great quaking fell on them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore, I was left alone, and I saw this great vision." He said he couldn't retain his strength. I'm skipping. 9. I heard, I, I heard, let's see, "Yet heard I the voice of his words. And when I heard the voice of his words, I fell into a deep sleep on my face toward the ground. And behold, a hand touched me and set me up on my knees and upon the palms of my hands, and said unto me, O Daniel." So here's my thing. So I stopped at 11. So it's the transition that's bothering me. And I was said, someone said, "Hey, this is Gabriel that touched him," but that's not how I'm seeing it. And so for me, the being that had that was girded with fine gold of Uphaz, his body was like beryl, eyes like lamps of fire. This is the person that touches him and puts him up on his feet. Now, if I am not in the ballpark, please give me your take on where I'm missing the link.
Gotcha. Yeah, it is a tricky one because it starts off with this vision of the one in linen with this radiant appearance, because he's saying that because Daniel is in verse verses 8 and 9 is definitely referring to this linen person. Okay. He's like, wow, he saw this great vision, and when he saw him, it was just like, yo, all the strength left me. I just like I essentially fainted. Really, that's what happened. He fainted. So now in that verse, we are not told the exact words that the man in linen cloth said to him.
Okay.
But he understood it. And so he understood what he said. And when I think that 10 and 11 now is when Gabriel came in, when the angel came in. So the one in linen, he spoke to him and he fainted. All right, when he fainted, I think that's when the linen left. Because if you hear this connection, he says after he fainted, right? And he like face planted. Okay, he was his face in the ground. Okay, it was not a cute faint. He was, and so he says a hand touched me. It set me up on my hands and knees, and he said to me. So for me, it shows that this he is related to one who set the hands and, set me on my hands and my knees. That's what it shows to me. And he says, hey, look, Daniel, a man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you and stand upright, and unto thee I know I am sent. All right. So seeing that when Daniel had this reaction to this being, this linen being, and I don't know if you're going to ask me to identify this person or not in scripture and all that, but
I went and
go ahead.
I shared that information with the audience.
Okay.
And I'm glad that you pointed out 10, but we have had a conversation, but you can speak about it.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that when he had this reaction to him, and, he's not the only one who had this reaction. Every time that this person has appeared, that has been essentially the same reaction.
Yeah, I agree.
I've had, let's see, where do I have that? I did jot them down.
Well,
but you may not yeah. So anyway, I mean, this person, I'm sure you have probably pointed to the scripture, not just in Daniel 10, but Revelation 1, that it's the same, just the similarities of the description, and in Ezekiel chapter 1 as well. Even Matthew 17, when it's talking about Jesus, describes the same thing. So it kind of shows you that Daniel 10, the linen person in 10, Revelation 1, Ezekiel 1, 25 and 28, and in Matthew 17, 1 and 2, and this is the same story in Mark 9 as well, Mark 9,
right.
2 and 3. So those have the very similar descriptions of this person, which tells you that it is Jesus that they're referring to. And so anyhow, every time this person appears to someone, they have the same reaction. I did write it down. Where did I write it down?
Revelations 1, John behaves the same way.
In Exodus, when Moses sees the burning bush, he has the same reaction. It didn't see the same vision, but the same reaction of the presence. He's like, saying the same words. You're standing on holy ground. He essentially, he's scared. When Joshua, the one who succeeded Moses in Joshua chapter 5, he sees the commander of the Lord's army, and he's like, whoa, hey, you stand on holy ground as well, same person. When Saul, the persecutor became Paul, that conversion experience on the Damascus Road, when Jesus appeared to him in light, just struck him down with light, he had the same reaction. He fainted. It's like just the presence of God, whether, and in the personhood of Jesus and in all the forms he comes up, it's just, he has this overwhelming presence that floors us if he doesn't protect us. And so that's why I'm saying that that now the next statement happens. He's like, I have fainted, my face is planted. Now a hand comes and say, you know what? I was sent now to give you understanding, because the one in linen, Jesus, has spoken. He's told him these things already. And it hints to me, because this is an introduction as what's coming up, that what he's going to be discussing later on is actually what Jesus was saying. And so now Gabriel is going to go further and explain it some more. He says, look, I was sent to kind of tell you about this and explain to you so you can understand. And then he goes into, the explanation. And so,
Question.
yes, please.
Let me interrupt just for a second. So I clearly see that there is a transition, but no one says, in verse 10 it says, and behold, a hand touched me. So you don't know necessarily who touched. However, this is just me looking at it based on what you're saying, is that when he says, um, fear not, Daniel, dearly beloved. Let's see how it says, verse 12. Then said he unto me, fear not, Daniel, for the day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and chasten thyself before thy God, the words, and I have come to I've come for those words. So is it my understanding that there was a pause? Information was given in 9. Maybe not all the information was given in 9, and then he comes back again in 10 to complete providing that information.
Yeah, so we can't see, Daniel, you can't really necessarily divide up certain things. It's because it is a seamless continuation, and really, even though there are gaps,
Okay.
there are gaps of time. And it's going through 3 kings, through the period of 3 kings,
Right.
essentially, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, and then the dual co-regent of Darius and Cyrus. They started rule around the same time.
Right.
Darius didn't last that long, and Cyrus, became the sole one when Darius died, really. And so that's why it's said that so Darius and Cyrus kind of started around the same time.
Right.
So the first year of Darius is essentially the first year of Cyrus as well. But so 9, because 9 is a continuation of 8. Chapter 8, chapter 9. Let's say chapter 9 is a continuation of chapter 8. Because in chapter 9, to be honest, if you look at this here, there is actually no vision. So it starts off with the prayer, all the way up to 20. That's the Daniel's prayer.
Right.
All right. So he's praying. There is no vision. He's praying. And then Gabriel says, look, I'm here. All right. And I have come to give you skill and understanding.
Right.
Okay. At the beginning of your supplication, the commandment came forth, and I am come to show you. So since the beginning that you started praying, I was sent and I'm here. You still praying, and I'm here to give you understanding. Now he said, understand the matter and consider the vision. You're like, wait, what? Then the question is, what vision? If 9 doesn't start with a vision, then what vision are you referring to? So you can only say there has to be a previous vision.
Correct.
So the last time he had a vision was actually in chapter 8.
Correct.
So the rest of the chapter that is talking about the 70 weeks, that is to give some further information about the vision he had in chapter 8 that had confused him. They had that statement. They made a statement there in verse verse 27, actually the last verse. It says, Daniel fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward I rose up, did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. I didn't understand what in the world I just saw in chapter 8.
Right.
So therefore, that's why in chapter 9 now, it starts off with Daniel praying. He wasn't praying about 8. He wasn't praying about the vision in 8. He was praying about the fact that, hey, the 70 years are coming to an end, but I don't really see any indication that it is ending. So
Right.
what's going on? And so, now he's saying, he says, in order for him to look at this, the interesting thing is this. It's like he's saying, he said 70 weeks. And it's very interesting that 70 weeks, 70 days, there's a similarity thing there. So it's not, although it's not the same time period, it's the number shows you that it is, he's making a connection. You're worrying about the 70 days of the end of your or the 70 years, that's the end of your captivity, which is going to start off what it is that I started telling you about in chapter 8, right? So because we know that the end of the captivity, and what signaled really the end of the captivity, was when they said, hey, you can go back. You can go back now and build a temple. You can go back and build, and it was, people gonna say, hey, Cyrus was the one that did it. Yes, he started it, but we had, the three,
Right.
The three ones that say yes, go. And that's the whole point, what was going on. And also in chapter 10, where Daniel was worried about that. I'm not going back and forth, but with, so 70 weeks is really saying that, hey, the 70 years is going to come to an end. And then the 70 weeks now, we're going to start that. And that is, the 70 weeks is connected to what you did not understand in chapter 8, which was the 2300 days. He was like, what?
Right.
And he says, yes, 70 weeks starts the 2300 days, or 2000 days, that's years. And so you see that, so that's why he's saying the 70 days, the 70 years of captivity, the end of it indicates that the 70 weeks, that's connected to the 2300 in chapter 8. I hope I'm not confusing you guys, is connected. He's showing all the connections of anything. So it is really a direct answer to his prayer. He says, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. He says 70 weeks have been determined. He's assuring him that the 70 years is coming to an end, and the 70 weeks is going to begin in a little bit.
Right.
So it was definitely a comfort. He was answering his prayer directly, but it also coincided with what he didn't understand previously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? I hope I'm not confusing you guys.
For me, it does.